Welcome back everybody to another Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous guide. Today it's gonna be mounted combat, and as per usual with my guides, these guys are a little bit more tiered towards people who are playing this on the highest difficulty. But even if you're playing this on the lower difficulties, everything applies to you also. It's just that you don't maybe have to do all these things because the game is easier. So, let's jump into the race selection, because that's where it starts. If you select a small race, the gnome or the halfling, then you have a plethora of options for mounting something on level 1, such as for instance you can go with a bear, which is medium, you are small, so you can mount something which is one size larger, which means that if you're small, bear medium, fine. Horse, also fine, it's large, so it's at least one size bigger. Black Smilodon, it's medium, you can mount that also. If you are another race, if you're not a halfling, if you are for instance, a human, a dampier, a elf, I mean anything but the small races. Then you can only mount things which are large. On level 1, that's only going to be the horse. The black horse or the regular horse. Those are the only large things. But most things grow on level 7. So for instance, if you start off with a medium mount like the boar, then it's going to grow on level 7. Elk, level 7. But there are things which are small. For instance, the Velociraptor, you will not be able to mount this with a small character. But on level 7, it will grow to medium, so you will be able to mount it then. There are things which grow on weird levels, such as the leopard, for instance, is small, but it grows to medium at level 4. So you need to check out all these mounts to figure out what mount to go with. In most cases, though, you're not going to be a halfling or a gnome, so your only option is going to be the black horse if you want to mount something on level 1, which is what I highly recommend. If you're playing this on the highest difficulty, you want to optimize your character, and if you have a character which is meant to have a mount and do a lot of damage, you need to be able to do that from level 1, because the game, of course, is the most difficult in the very beginning of the game, and then it gets easier and easier and easier and easier, and so on. So, why are we doing mounted combat? Well, we are doing mounted combat, I guess because it's cool maybe if you're playing this on the lower difficulties, but if you're playing this on a higher difficulty, you're probably doing mounted combat because you can deal a lot of damage through mounted combat, and you do that through the charge, of course. So, if you want to maximize the damage of your charge, which you probably do, you need to pick up a feat called Spirited Charge. You can pick up that feat on level 1, and I highly recommend you pick it up on level 1. And there's a couple of ways of picking it up on level 1, as it so happens. If you go with a Beast Rider here, for instance, you only get one feat, so you cannot pick it up on level 1. You can go Mounted Combat, which is a prerequisite for Spirited Charge, but you cannot select Spirited Charge. If you instead, for instance, let's say we went with Gendarme. Gendarme gets a bonus feat, which means that they are limited in their selection of animal companions, but if you're fine with that, then you can go with bonus feats, and you can use that bonus feat to select Spirited Charge. Another way of getting 2 feats in the beginning, if you don't want to do it this way, is for instance to go with the human. The human gets a bonus feat, which means that they have at least 2 feats on level 2. They can have more, of course, if the class itself gives you another feat. A third way of doing this is go with the Monk Sohei. Monk Sohei has a Monk bonus feat, which means that if we don't go mounted combat here, let's say we go toughness for some reason. I don't recommend going toughness level 1. I'm just showing you that you can go toughness level 1. And then you can select Spirited Charge, even though we don't have mounted combat, because of course the Monk class bypasses that in their feat selection. So that's another good way of doing things. Then we might ask ourselves what stats should we go with? I prefer actually to not go with a halfling because they have -2 to strength. I recommend something which actually has a bonus to strength. We're gonna go with a damper, one of my favorites. Young Sheborn has a +2 racial bonus to strength. This is very important because when we charge in with a weapon, if it's not a finesse weapon, we're going to deal extra damage with our strength modifier, and we're going to hit stuffs easier with our strength modifier. So strength is very important. I know that on lower difficulties it might be tempting to max out on dexterity, but in most cases I don't think you need to do that, honestly. You get very little from dexterity. You get a little bit of bonus on initiative. I'm going to show you how to get around that. You don't actually need to worry too much about initiative on your characters. You get a little bit of bonus of stealth, which is one of the nicest things about this, I guess. And you get AC, but you don't need to care too much about your AC, because when you have an animal companion, in almost every case, the enemies are going to target the animal companion instead of you. So my recommendation is that when you build your characters so that your mount or your animal companion is very sturdy, and they're there to take the damage, to receive the damage, and your character is just there to deal out the damage. So you don't need to max out on dexterity. There is an argument, maybe depending on your builds, that you might go dexterity, depending on how you multi-class, for instance. Same thing with constitution and intelligence. I'm going to talk about why we need intelligence when we get into the combat section. But the only thing you really need guaranteed is strength. Dexterity also adds to your mobility, of course, and if you are using abilities such as mounted combat, then mobility skill can be useful to make your mount last a bit longer. But I wouldn't prioritize dexterity unless it also synergizes well with something that you're multi-classing or some other part of your build. Except for that, you don't need to care about that. Just strength, strength, strength. So, with that being said, that was pretty fast. Let's jump into the combat section. One more important thing to cover here is, of course, Boon Companion. I forgot to mention this when we were talking about feats. There is a feat called Boon Companion. You can pick it up from level 1. You can pick it up. The only prerequisite of picking up Boon Companion is that you have an animal companion. So you can plan out a little bit. If you plan to multi-class into something which doesn't have an animal companion, then I really recommend that you pick up Boon Companion and that you're a little bit smart about it and you pick this up even before you multiclass, unless you get a feat on that level when you multiclass. I know it's a little bit complicated. But if you don't pick up Boon Companion and you multiclass into something which doesn't have an animal companion, of course your animal companion will be lower level than you. So to avoid that, pick up Boon Companion instead. As it says here, the abilities of your animal companion are calculated as though your class were 4 levels higher to a maximum effective level to your character level. Which means that you can select 4 levels of other stuffs which might be useful for a class. As for instance, Moon Linger, as it so happens, she is a Sohei, which is the only thing which has an animal companion, Blood Rider, 1 level, and 2 levels of Vivisectionist, which means that her animal companion is still a very high level. Next thing, since we're playing this on unfair difficulty, as you can see, we have an attack bonus of plus 30 here. If you want to hit something, it's very, very basic. Unfair difficulty and stuff. If you want to hit something on unfair difficulty, as you can see if we hover over the shore here, these guys have AC of 29, which means that if we don't have a bonus of plus 20, we're essentially never gonna hit this guy. So we need on our guys to have True Strike. How do you gain True Strike? Well, as it so happens, with this character right here, we have Vivisectionist. You need to pick up a class which can get True Strike. This is very essential for actually landing something on the higher difficulties. If you play this on lower difficulties, this does not apply to you. Because the opponents don't have that high defenses, so you will actually be able to hit them without True Strike. So don't worry about that if you're playing on something lower than unfair difficulty. Don't worry about it. But if you play this on unfair difficulty, pick up True Strike. As for instance here, we have a Vivisectionist, and we have a little bit of intelligence, so we can actually add a couple of True Strikes in our spellbook. Other things noteworthy is, of course, that in order to deal as much damage as possible with our charge, we want to maximize our strength and sneak attacks. So sneak attacks, when we attack in something, I'm going to show you in just 1 second when we actually get into combat here. When we attack something, since we are attacking together with our animal companion, we count as flanking. Flanking is going to give us a +2 on our attack roll, pushing it up even further. I think we're going to have something like 35 or 40 on our attack when we actually get to attack. Which is beneficial, of course, for actually hitting our opponents. But also, if we go or if we flank something, that will enable us to sneak attack. And sneak attack, of course, deal a d6 extra damage, and Vivisectionist gets sneak attack die. So that's why I've gone with what I've gone. So sneak attack is very good, adding extra strength is very good, deals more damage, and so on. Also, for unfair difficulty, I recommend something which has a very high crit modifier, because sometimes you will have to rely on crits to actually get through certain fights. Anyways, that's more basics out of the way. Now, let's get into the actual mounted combat. I recommend that when you sneak up on enemies, you use this stealth feature. Make sure that when you stealth that you have everything selected. You can do that with Control A, for instance, that selects all your characters. If you only select a character, let's say, for instance, I go out of stealth here with everything, and then I go and I select this horse here, and I go into stealth with this horse. Now only this horse is in stealth, but the character on top of it is not in stealth. So make sure that when you select everything and go into stealth, because else you're not really in stealth. Next thing you need to keep in mind is the artificial intelligence button. You can click to activate AI, and I really recommend that you deactivate this if you're going into turn-based mode. But when you're not in turn-based mode, I recommend that you have this on. When you have this on, you will see a little bit of like a brain here. Now you know, now it's off, now it's on. So, when you charge something, it's very important that you don't charge out of stealth. So you need to go out of stealth when you charge. Important. Next thing, I recommend that since you're gonna charge a lot in this game, that you use this bar here. It's gonna look like this. If you've never used this bar before, click this little button here, and you will get a couple of quick commands. So I recommend that you bind the charge on all your characters on the same key, because else you are going to get very confused, because you need to do this for every character, because every character has a unique bar. So do that for every character, makes it so much easier. So, you've gone out of stealth, now you need to charge. If you select a horse, select a horse and charge, that will only charge the horse. That will not charge your character. You can, for instance, charge with the horse and cast a spell. I don't know why you would do that, but you can do that. And I've messed this up a million times, so I'm just telling you now. Don't do this, because it often selects your horse. As you can see here, we have a horse selected. And we have another horse selected. That don't click here. And then, for instance, I'm going to use Control 1 here to charge with one of my characters. I don't know why this is not... Oh, these don't have charge buttons, fortunately. But don't do like this, because now I'm only charging the horse. We don't want to do that. We want to charge the character and the horse, which means you need to select the character and then Control 1 and charge in. And as I said, have artificial intelligence on if you're not doing this on turn-based. And what you want to do is, of course, you start off doing this not in turn-based, and then, before they land their first strike, essentially, you turn into turn-based. So you never want to start off in turn-based. You always want to do non-turn-based, turn into turn-based. So make sure that turn-based is not on when you begin your charge. So this is off, and this is on. Now you're ready to charge. Now you're ready to charge. Also cast all your buffs before going. I guess that's kind of obvious, but here I've put on Blood Rage, I put on Arcane Strike, I put on my Power Attack, I've drank the Mutagen Strength, and I've cast the True Strike on this character. Now we're ready to charge. So I'm just gonna go through every character, I'm gonna click out the charges here. Badoink. And now, also do this while you're in pause, of course. That's another important thing to keep in mind. So now I'm gonna go in and I'm just gonna show you. Now when you're in this mid-charge right here, now you can see that there are 2 charge icons. If you only have 1 charge icon over a character, that means you messed up. That means you only charge your horse and not the character. That means the character is not going to get the charge buff, and the character is not going to attack when you get into combat. Or maybe gonna attack. Who knows what's gonna happen. It depends on what the AI is gonna do. So make sure you have double charges. When you're in this mode right here, if you have any buffs, or if you have any debuffs, I should say, such as, for instance, you have Smite if you're a Paladin, and stuff like that. If you have something that you can cast while you are running, cast these now. This is the perfect time to cast all the Smites and stuff like that. And when that is done, when you cast all the Smites, we're gonna go a little bit forward, and we're gonna resolve a couple of attacks here, and here we can see the damage coming in. So something that 110 damage. Okay, so that was to our horse, unfortunately. But as you can see, everything gets a sneak attack. And we of course get a sneak attack. Here we can see our attack bonus. We get a plus 20 from True Strike. We get a circumstance bonus since we are mounted, very nice. We get a plus 2 bonus. We always get a plus 2 bonus from flanking. Very important to keep that in mind. Plus 1 from Master Excite, doesn't matter too much. Plus 2 from Blood Rage. And then we deal the damage, as you can see here. We deal 22 slashing damage. Then we get an extra 2 damage, that is going to be from our sneak attack die, and then this is all going to get doubled, and for some reason there's also a bug in the game which adds an extra point of damage. Doesn't matter too much, but we get 25 here, we should actually have gotten 24 damage. I mean, it's not gonna matter too much. Not gonna matter too much. At this point, you can choose, like you can look at the characters that you're up against here. If the character seems like they're about to do a hit against you, if they're mid-swing essentially, then I would recommend switching in turn-based mode. But I think we're fine for a little bit more timer. Okay, nothing is dead yet, okay. Go forward and step forward again. So now it looks like... Okay, now he's about to swing. As you can see, it's mid-swing animation. This is when you go into turn-based mode. And just attack. Okay, he's almost dead. Just gonna gamble on us killing him here. Okay, Brackers. That's not good. It's fine. It's fine. Hopefully it doesn't kill anything. Okay, because that girl, that's not good at all. But it may be fine. It's maybe fine. So, if you're also a little bit of a bonus tip here, I guess. If you're up against something which is invisible, as for instance, there's a character here which is invisible. If you move to that character and you stand on top of that character, you can still see him. So then you can attack. We're not gonna hit him because this guy is invisible. But if, because we have such low attack rating against him, but if you cast True Strike, we will still be able to hit him. So that's very important to note there. Just gonna cast this, and I think that concludes the combat section. That's pretty much all I wanted to tell you about mounted combat. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.